All right, so my name is Aubrey,
My name is Blessia.
And my name is Karina.
and our presentation is on artificial meat adding to global food security and hopefully a sustainable future.
And our overview will go as this. What is artificial meat? Meat background. How can it help? Scientific research comparison. Peer journal versus media. And then our resource slide.
So, artificial meat is also known as cultured or lab grown meat. The idea came about as a game changing development in the global meat industry. Currently, the global artificial meat market, is valued over 240 million and has high growth expectations. It's made by cultivating animal cells in a controlled environment, which eliminates the need for slaughtering large amounts of livestock. It's not vegan or plant based, but real animal meat grown from cells without needing to raise or kill animals.
And how can it help? The first one is to reduce demand on animal slaughter due to rapid population increase. And this means like cultured meat offers a scalable solution by replicating animal muscle cells without slaughter, easing pressure on livestock systems. And then it also means that the global population is projected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050, increasing meat demand a lot. And then secondly, to prolonging the climate crisis that is destroying natural and agricultural resources, environmental pollution. So pretty much what this means is that the lab-grown meat reduces emissions and it requires 99% less land and up to 96% less water, preserving ecosystems and natural resources. And thirdly, to keep up with current food trends, for example, the ketogenic diet, essentially what it's saying is that like because I don't know if many know, but the ketogenic diet is very protein dense and low carbs. So essentially it creates more meat so that way these health trends can pretty much flow efficiently rather than creating a scarcity in our meat. And for the fourth one, we have can help lower foodborne illnesses and disease transmitted from animals to humans. And pretty much what this means is like the cultured meat is produced in sterile environments free of E. coli, salmonella, and other pathogens common in conventional meat. And it also helps prevent, the avian flu, the swine flu, which is transmitted from animals to humans. And then modifiable nutrition profile that covers dietary needs. So pretty much what this is saying is that it is the composition of kosher meat that can be modified to more omega-3s, less fat, or fortified vitamins to fit modern diets. It's also customizable to meet specific nutritional needs of individuals or communities. It's free of antibiotics and resistant bacteria. So essentially, what this means is that the lab grown meat eliminates the risk entirely of being antibiotic free. And it's 80%. And if many don't know, the US's livestock has 80% antibiotics in it. So it's the artificial meat will be contributing to the antibiotic resistance. So
Okay.
yes.
So we have all this research, but what does it say? We looked at two recent peer-reviewed studies to get a better idea of what the science actually says about artificial meat, aka fake meat. The first one is ACS Food Science and Technology. It's on the left. Um, Basically, it did a whole life cycle analysis tracking the environmental impact of making cultured meat from start to finish. It showed that while lab grown meat uses less land and water than beef, it still has a huge energy footprint, especially because of the growth medium, stuff like that that the cells feed on. So, in order for it to automatically be called green or healthier, that aspect has to be fixed. And then on the right is the second study that came out more recently in 2025 that took a different approach. It looked at how cultured meat is talked about in articles and media, and what narratives are being pushed to the public. The big takeaway was that most of the talk is super positive, focusing on the potential of artificial meat to fix the climate and food problems that surround and live in everyday America. The study also pointed out that things like high cost, consumer hesitation, and scalability are often left out or simply glossed over because it's too a little bit overcomplicated for the typical consumer. But together, these studies tell us that there's real promise in this technology. It just has to be proven and worked effectively. There are still big obstacles, and they're not always mentioned in every headline. People just tend to complain and move past it, but there's a lot of deeper issues within it.
Nice. And then the comparison to the media, it's not widely accepted into the media world due to the limited public acceptance and awareness. And to elaborate on this, pretty much despite the potential lab-grown meat, it's not likely, um, it's not widely embraced in mainstream, or public dialogue due to the lack of education, transparency, the visibility that contributes to the consumer skepticism. Um, and then secondly, there are many more controversies to the emergence of new technologies, and pretty much with it, that like many consumers associate lab meat with highly processed or like genetically modified GM foods, which raises fear for long-term health impacts. And there's misconceptions about the quote unquote unnatural production processes, which also fuel more resistance. And then we have many reveal consuming high processed food and genetically modified foods to produce other health risks. So pretty much what I was saying earlier, the critics link lab-grown meat back to similar ultra-processed foods such as blood pressure, obesity and high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, dementia, and some cancers. And these concerns often stem from broader distrust in the industrial food systems rather than scientific evidence against cultured meat itself. And pretty much like the need to be transparent and long-term health data, it shows that like lab-grown meat is relatively new technology. And because of this, the long-term studies on it and its effects are still going, and the uncertainty contributes to the hesitation about adoptions and adaptation to this meat, especially among health cost cautious customers and consumers. And then the public opinion depends on trust and education.
Pretty much to piggyback on what Blessia says, when it comes to trying to gain a positive public opinion, manufacturers have to be transparent to gain their trust through transparency through publishings.
So let's talk about media versus journal comparison, and how they both have a completely different approach. So for our popular media, we chose US Resist News. It talks about artificial meat, like its guaranteed solution for climate change and food insecurity. It's really easy to understand because Blessia said consumers are already limited and not as proactive towards actively trying to understand it. So there's very easy to understand language. It has lots of good visuals, like it looks good. People would want to read it. It has close-up shots of clean labs or perfectly round meat patties, something that would easily catch you in a commercial. But when looked at peer-reviewed articles, the tone is totally shifted. Scientists are way more cautious of what they say. The media doesn't really Popular media nowadays doesn't really care because they just want to get the consumer's attention, whereas scientists use technical terms and facts and they back up their claims and they have data and charts that may not be as simple to understand and read, but it talks about the challenges like energy use and cost because it is not cheap or affordable to make these as much as it is affordable to make other consumer goods. Some key differences that we noticed was, for example, the popular media was short and bold claims, a lot of buzzwords that just get you like revolutionary, game changer. And then the journal was more detailed explanations in terms like feasibility, trade-offs, or emission breakdowns as well. The media has a lot of emotional appeal because, like I said, it's just trying to appeal to the consumer. And then the journal is a lot of technical analysis, like a deep, deep dive on why it is the way it is. But this matters most importantly because the media gets people interested and excited, but it oversimplifies science to where people are misinformed. And like Lesia said, it's a lack of education. So the journal gives you a full picture that's a little harder to digest, but to everyday readers, but it delivers the kind of communication that you need, that, and like Aubrey said, you need transparency about what's real because this is still a long-term process.
Yes.
So thank you so much for watching this video.
Thank you so much.
We can't wait to hear all the feedback, and these are all our sources.
So excited.